horse didn't run when it saw the rope. It froze and stared at him like it remembered. Ethan had only paid $100 for a broken animal no one wanted. But the way it watched him, quiet, knowing, felt wrong. That scar on its shoulder, it wasn't just familiar. It belonged to a moment he had buried. And somehow, this horse had come back for it. The horse didn't run when it saw the rope. It froze and stared at him like it remembered. Ethan noticed it before anyone else did. Not because it stood out, but because it didn't. At the far end of the auction yard, where the dust settled thicker and the noise faded into something dull and tired, the horse stood alone, head lowered, ribs faintly visible beneath a coat that had once been gold, but now looked washed out under the harsh afternoon light. Men walked past it without slowing. One of them laughed. Not worth the trouble. Ethan didn't laugh. He watched. There was something off about the way the horse held itself. Not weak, not broken. Just withdrawn. Like it had already decided not to fight anymore. And yet, when a handler approached with a rope, the horse didn't pull back. It didn't resist. It didn't react at all. It simply lifted its head and looked. Not at the man holding the rope, at Ethan, across the yard, through the dust, the noise, the distance. Straight at him. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. Yeah, all right, he muttered under his breath, though he didn't know why. The bidding didn't last long. A few half-hearted raises, a shrug, someone walking away before the number even settled. 100, the auctioneer called out. Silence. Ethan didn't plan to speak. He didn't come for this. Didn't need another animal. Didn't need the cost, the trouble, the quiet responsibility that came with something no one else wanted. But the horse was still looking at him. Not begging, not afraid. Just waiting. Ethan lifted his hand. I'll take it. The words left him before he could pull them back. The trailer ride home was quiet. Too quiet. Most horses shifted, kicked, made some kind of sound. This one didn't. Ethan checked twice in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see it lying down or panicking out of sight. But every time, it stood there, still, balanced, watching. He turned his eyes back to the road. Just a horse, he said aloud. But the words didn't sit right. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun had dropped low behind the hills, dragging long shadows across the pasture. The wind had picked up, carrying the dry scent of grass and something colder beneath it. Ethan opened the trailer gate slowly. All right, easy now. The horse didn't rush out. It stepped down carefully, one hoof, then another, measured, controlled, like it had done this before. But when it reached the ground, it didn't walk away. It stopped and turned, looking past Ethan, toward the open land, toward something that wasn't there. Ethan followed its gaze instinctively. Just the pasture, the fence, the ridge in the distance, lined with dark pines. Nothing unusual. Still, the horse didn't move. Go on, Ethan said, stepping aside. The horse didn't respond. It stood there for a long second, then finally walked forward into the field. Slow, deliberate. Not exploring. Not nervous, like it already knew the place. Ethan frowned. That's not possible. The next morning the valley was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that made small sounds feel sharper than they should. Ethan stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand, expecting to see the horse somewhere near the fence or the trough. It wasn't. His grip tightened slightly around the mug. He scanned the pasture. Empty. A cold feeling crept into his chest. Then, movement. Near the far edge of the land. Ethan squinted. The horse stood there, at the back fence, facing the ridge. Not grazing. Not wandering. Just standing. Still. Watching the line of trees as if something waited there. Ethan set the mug down without realizing it, walked forward slowly. "Hey." The horse didn't turn, didn't react. Ethan followed its line of sight again. The ridge, the pines, the narrow, barely visible path cutting between them. Something about it felt wrong, or maybe familiar. Ethan stopped. A faint pressure built behind his eyes, like a memory trying to surface, but not fully forming. He shook his head. "No," he muttered. But the feeling didn't go away. The horse shifted slightly, just enough to reveal its left shoulder. Ethan's eyes caught it without meaning to. A scar. Long, curved, faded, but not gone. Something about it. His breath slowed. Not recognition, not yet, but close enough to make him uncomfortable. He looked away, then back again. The horse was still watching the ridge, not him, the ridge, like it was waiting for him to remember. Ethan swallowed, because for the first time since he brought it home, he had the strange, unsettling feeling that this wasn't a random purchase, and whatever he had just brought back to his land hadn't come here by accident. He knew exactly where that trail led. The thought didn't come gently. It stayed, pressing against Ethan's mind long after the horse drifted away and lowered its head to graze as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. He could feel it, like a splinter under the skin. That path behind the pines. He hadn't walked it in years. Ethan stood by the fence longer than he meant to, eyes fixed on the dark line of trees. The morning light stretched across the valley, thin and pale, but it never seemed to reach that part of the land. The horse noticed. It always did. The moment Ethan's gaze settled on the ridge, the palomino lifted its head, ears forward, body still. Not curious, alert, as if it had been waiting for him to look. Ethan frowned. "That doesn't mean anything," he muttered. But he didn't sound convinced. By midday the wind had shifted, cooler now, carrying the scent of dry leaves and something older beneath it. Ethan kept himself busy near the trough, hammering a loose board back into place, focusing on the rhythm, wood-nail impact, control. Simple things made sense. But even as he worked, something kept pulling his attention away. A sound. Faint. He stopped mid-swing, listened. Nothing. Just the wind brushing the edge of the trees. Ethan exhaled and shook his head, lifting the hammer again. Then the horse moved. Not suddenly, but enough. He looked up. It was no longer grazing. It stood near the far fence, facing the ridge again, completely still, watching. Ethan followed its gaze. Nothing there. No movement, no shape, no reason. Still, something about the silence felt wrong. By late afternoon, the sky flattened into a dull gray. The light drained out of the valley, leaving everything softer, quieter. Ethan carried a bucket of grain across the field, boots brushing through dry grass that whispered under each step. The horse approached this time, closer than before, but not for the food. It stopped just short of him, watching. Ethan hesitated, then held out his hand. The animal didn't flinch, but it didn't lean in either. It stayed just out of reach, as if measuring him. Then, slowly, it lowered its head toward the bucket. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Yeah, all right," he murmured. His hand rested lightly against its neck. Warm, real, but beneath that warmth, there was tension. His fingers drifted, almost without thought, toward the left shoulder. The scar. The horse stiffened. Not violently, just enough. Enough for Ethan to feel it. He pulled his hand back instantly. "Hey, easy." The horse lifted its head, and for a second they just stood there, looking at each other. Something passed between them, something Ethan couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore either, because in that moment, the scar didn't feel unfamiliar anymore. It came back in a flash. Not the whole memory, just a piece. Sunlight. Too bright. A rope pulled tight. A sound, wood cracking. Ethan stepped back. "No," he said under his breath. The horse didn't move. It just watched him, like it was waiting for him to remember the rest. That night, the cabin felt smaller. The walls held the heat from the stove, but it didn't reach him. Ethan sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug long gone cold, staring out the window toward the pasture. The horse was there, barely visible under the rising moon, not lying down, not grazing, standing, facing the ridge. Still. Ethan swallowed. "You're just a horse," he said quietly, as if saying it out loud might make it true. No answer. Only silence. And the feeling that he was the one being watched now. He didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, something almost formed, something just out of reach, a voice, a face, a moment that refused to complete itself. Near midnight, he gave up, pulled on his coat, stepped outside. The cold hit immediately, sharp and clean. Frost had begun to settle along the edges of the field, turning the grass pale under the moonlight. The horse was closer now, standing near the back fence, still facing the trees. Ethan walked toward it slowly. "All right. What is it?" he asked. The horse didn't turn. Ethan followed its gaze again. The ridge, the dark line of pines, the path he hadn't taken in years. Something tightened in his chest. And then, the memory shifted, clearer this time, a voice, not his. "Hold him steady, Ethan." He froze. That name. Daniel. It hit him harder than anything before, not like a thought, like something pulled out of him. Ethan's eyes dropped, almost against his will, to the scar on the horse's shoulder. Moonlight caught it. Same place. Same shape. Not similar. The same. Ethan stopped breathing. Because suddenly, he wasn't looking at a random animal anymore. He was looking at something that had been there, the day everything went wrong. And for the first time since he brought it home, Ethan understood one thing clearly. This wasn't coincidence. This horse hadn't just been found. It had been waiting. This wasn't coincidence. The thought stayed with Ethan until morning, but it didn't settle. It grew. By the time the first light touched the valley, he was already outside. The air was sharp, cold enough to sting his lungs, but it helped. It gave him something real to hold on to, because everything else didn't feel real anymore. The horse was waiting near the fence, not grazing, not moving, just there, as if it had known he would come. Ethan stopped a few steps away. For a moment, neither of them moved. He could feel it again, that quiet pressure building between them, like something unfinished. "You don't just show up like that," he said, more to himself than to the animal. No reaction. Just those dark, steady eyes. Ethan exhaled slowly, then reached for the rope. The gesture felt heavier than it should have. He stepped forward, careful, giving the horse space to pull away if it wanted. It didn't. The rope slipped over its neck without resistance, not trust, not submission, something else. Ethan tightened his grip slightly. "You know where that path goes," he said. The horse's ears flicked once. Then, it stepped forward, before he did. Ethan hesitated. Just for a second, because once he crossed that gate, there was no pretending anymore. He glanced back at the cabin, still, quiet, safe. Then forward. The ridge waited. He swallowed, and followed. The ground changed quickly. Grass thinned into rough patches of dirt, then into uneven soil scattered with roots and stone. The air cooled as they climbed, shadows stretching longer beneath the trees. Ethan noticed something then. The horse wasn't pulling. It wasn't leading him the way a trained animal would. It was choosing. Step by step, slowing at certain turns, pausing just slightly, before moving again, like it was searching, or remembering. Ethan's grip loosened without him realizing. "You've been here," he said quietly. The horse didn't react, but it didn't deny it either. Halfway up the ridge, Ethan stopped. "I don't have to do this," he muttered. The words sounded weak the moment they left him, because he already knew. He wasn't deciding anymore. The horse turned its head slightly, looking back at him. Not urging, not forcing, just waiting. Ethan let out a long breath. "Yeah," he said. "I know," and kept walking. The trees closed in, Pine branches filtered the light into thin, broken lines that shifted with the wind. The ground dipped and rose beneath his boots, forcing him to watch his steps. Then, a sound. Ethan froze. A sharp crack somewhere ahead. His head snapped up. "Did you hear that?" Silence. The horse stood still, ears forward, listening. Ethan's pulse picked up. For a second, just a second, he thought about turning back, because whatever waited ahead, it didn't feel empty. But the horse moved again, slow, certain. Ethan followed. The clearing appeared almost without warning. One moment, trees, the next, space. Ethan stopped at the edge. His chest tightened. It was smaller than he remembered. Or maybe he was just seeing it clearly for the first time. The shape of the land hadn't changed. The slight dip in the center. The uneven ground. And there, the broken post. Ethan's breath caught. "No!" The word barely formed. The rope slipped from his hand. He didn't notice. His body had already gone still. Because memory wasn't fragmenting anymore. It was coming back whole. Too fast. Too sharp. "You said he'd hold." "I thought he would." The sound of the horse. Panicking. The rope tightening. Wood splitting. Ethan staggered back a step. His vision blurred. "Stop," he whispered. But it didn't stop. The horse moved. Ethan looked up. It stepped toward the broken post slowly, lowering its head as if something there still mattered. Not fear, not confusion. Recognition. Ethan's chest tightened. Because now, he saw it. Not just the place, but what had happened there, and his part in it. The horse shifted its body slightly, turning, positioning itself, its left side facing him. The scar, clear in the filtered light. Ethan took a step forward, then another, each one heavier than the last. His hand lifted, paused, then touched the scar. The horse didn't move, didn't pull away, just stood there, waiting. The memory completed. Not as sound, not as flashes, as truth. Ethan inhaled sharply. "I left," he said. Not questioning, not denying, admitting. "I left you there." The wind moved through the clearing, sharp and sudden, scattering dry needles across the ground. The horse stepped back, then turned, not toward the way they came. Deeper, into the trees. Ethan's hand dropped. "Wait." The horse didn't run. It walked. Steady, certain, following a direction Ethan had never taken before. The clearing stayed behind them. The past, no longer hidden, but not finished. Ethan stood still for 1 second longer, then followed, because now he understood. What he had faced was only the beginning. What he had faced wasn't the end of it. The horse didn't stop. It moved deeper into the trees, steady, unhurried, like whatever it was following didn't need to rush. Ethan stood there for a second too long, because this was the point, the one where he could still turn back, forget everything he had just remembered. Walk down the ridge, go back to the ranch, pretend this was just a strange coincidence that didn't mean anything. His chest tightened. "I don't need to know the rest," he said quietly. The words sounded hollow. Ahead of him the horse paused, not looking back, just waiting. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, then exhaled. "Yeah," he muttered, "I do," and stepped forward. The forest changed the deeper they went. The ground softened in places, dipped unexpectedly in others. Roots twisted across the path like something trying to trip him, forcing him to slow down. The air felt heavier here, holding on to the scent of damp earth and old pine. No wind, no birds. Just the sound of his own breathing, and the quiet rhythm of the horse ahead. Ethan noticed something again. The horse wasn't walking in a straight line. It slowed at certain spots, tilted its head slightly, adjusted its direction, not leading, not guiding, remembering. "It's not taking me somewhere," Ethan whispered. "It's going back." The realization settled in slowly, And somehow, that made it worse. They reached a narrow dip in the land. Ethan nearly missed it. The ground sloped down sharply, hidden by brush and shadow until he was almost on top of it. He caught himself against a low branch, steadying his footing as he looked down. The horse stepped into the hollow without hesitation. Ethan followed more carefully. The soil felt different here, loose, disturbed. Not recently, but not untouched either, like something had been here once and never fully left. Then he saw it, a length of rope, half buried in the dirt. Ethan stopped, his breath slowed, then held, because he didn't need to get closer to know, he already did. He stepped down anyway. Each movement felt heavier now, like the air itself resisted him. The rope lay twisted near the center of the hollow, fibers worn, edges frayed, but still holding the shape it had been left in. Ethan crouched. His hand hovered above it, not touching, not yet. "I remember this," he said. Not to the horse, to himself. For a moment, nothing happened. No memory, no voice. Just silence, and then it hit. Not in pieces, all at once. "You can't just walk away, Ethan." "I said I didn't mean to." "That doesn't fix it." The sound of something pulling tight. The horse struggling, the ground tearing under its hooves. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut. "Stop." But it didn't. Because this time, he wasn't turning away. His hand closed around the rope, rough, dry, real. "I left it," he said. The truth didn't shake, didn't break. It just settled. "I left him to deal with it." The words stayed in the air longer than he expected, because once spoken, they couldn't be taken back. The horse stepped closer, not toward the rope, toward him. Its shoulder brushed lightly against his arm. Warm, steady. Ethan let out a breath. Not relief, not yet, but something close to it. He opened his eyes, looked around the hollow again. Really looked this time. The ground, the angle, the way the trees curved around the space. And suddenly, he understood something he hadn't before. "This isn't where it ended," he said quietly. The horse lifted its head, ears forward, body tense, listening. Ethan followed its gaze, deeper into the forest. At first, nothing, just shadow, stillness. Then, a shape, faint, unnatural, something that didn't belong to the forest. Ethan stood slowly, the rope still in his hand. His pulse began to rise again, not from memory this time, from what was waiting ahead, because whatever he had been afraid to face wasn't behind him. It was still there. And this time, there was no one else left to face it for him. There was no one else left to face it for him. Ethan didn't move right away. The shape stood there between the trees, still, silent, almost blending into the shadows like something the forest had tried to hide. For a moment he told himself it could be anything, a fallen post, a broken fence, something ordinary, something that didn't mean anything. His chest tightened, because part of him needed that to be true. "For all I know, this is nothing," he said quietly. The words didn't hold. The horse stepped forward. Not fast, not hesitant, certain. Ethan watched it go, his feet rooted to the ground. Because this was it, the last chance to turn back. If he stayed where he was, if he let the horse go alone, then whatever truth waited ahead would remain unfinished, unconfirmed, unreal. Ethan swallowed. For a brief second, something fragile surfaced inside him. Hope. Maybe Daniel had made it out. Maybe everything he remembered had been wrong. Maybe the years had twisted it into something it wasn't. Ethan took a step forward, then another, because he needed that to be true. The trees thinned just enough. Light slipped through in narrow beams, cutting across the ground and landing on the shape ahead. Wood rough, still standing. Ethan's breath slowed. "No," he whispered. Not yet. Not until he saw it clearly. He moved closer. each step quieter than the last. The world seemed to shrink around him, the forest pulling inward, the silence deepening until even his own breathing felt too loud. Then he saw it, fully, a simple cross. No name, no marking, just wood driven into the earth. Ethan stopped. Everything inside him went still. Because in that instant, the hope disappeared. Not slowly, all at once. The rope slipped from his hand. It fell beside the base of the cross, landing in the dirt with a sound too soft to matter. And yet, somehow, it did. Because now, everything made sense. Daniel hadn't walked away. He hadn't fixed it and gone home. He had stayed. Stayed when the horse panicked, stayed when the rope tightened, stayed when Ethan didn't. Ethan's legs weakened as he lowered himself to the ground. "I thought you handled it," he said, his voice breaking under the weight of something far too late. "I thought you got him free." The silence answered. Not empty, but final. The horse stepped beside him. Not in front, not behind. Beside. Its presence was steady, quiet, grounding, undeniable. Ethan felt it before he looked. Then slowly he turned. The animal lowered its head, pressing lightly against his shoulder. Not demanding, not forgiving. Just there. Ethan closed his eyes. And this time, the memory didn't fight him. It unfolded. Clear, complete. "Just hold him steady, Ethan. I've got it." Daniel's voice. Tired, but certain. And Ethan, letting go. Not the rope. The moment. Turning away. Choosing distance over responsibility. Ethan inhaled sharply. "I left you," he said. No excuses. No defense. Just truth. The wind moved through the trees again. Soft this time. Almost like breath. Ethan opened his eyes and looked at the cross. "I can't fix this," he said quietly. The words felt different now. Not avoidance, acceptance. He reached down, picked up the rope. For a long second, he just held it, feeling its weight, its roughness, everything it carried. Then, slowly, he began to untie it. The knot resisted, stiff with time, tight from years of being left the way it was. Ethan's fingers worked patiently, not forcing it, not rushing, until finally, it loosened, opened, released. He set the rope down, not thrown, not abandoned. Let go. When he stood, something had shifted, not outside, inside. The weight didn't disappear, but it settled, into something he could carry. The horse stepped back, giving him space, waiting. Ethan took one last look at the cross, then turned. They walked out of the forest together. No rope, no distance, just the quiet rhythm of two lives moving forward at the same pace. The trees thinned, the light returned, the valley opened. At the edge of the pasture, Ethan stopped, looked at his hands. Empty. For the first time in years, that didn't feel like loss. The horse walked ahead into the field, its pale coat catching the late light, moving easily now, no hesitation, no weight holding it back. It didn't look behind, because it didn't need to. Ethan followed. Slow. Steady. Not because he was being led, because he chose to. Behind them, the forest remained. Quiet. Holding what had been left there. Ahead, the land stretched wide under the fading sky. Ethan took a breath and kept walking. Because some things don't disappear with time. They wait until you're ready to face them. Some wounds don't fade with time. They wait to be faced. This story reminds us that running from guilt only deepens it, but courage can still set things right in the heart. If this moved you, stay with us. There are more stories ahead that reveal the quiet, powerful bond between humans and horses.
If this story meant something to you, share your thoughts below and follow Horse Heart Healing for more stories like this.